I'm gonna do a big splash. Graphics.
Nope.
So it's about 10 o'clock. I want to welcome everyone to our first ever Business Connector series. This is a program sponsored by the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation. He's going to put us on screen, hopefully. This is an attempt to assist our businesses and our governmental folks on connecting our businesses in Antrim County with different services. So today we've invited SBDC and also NLEA, lots of acronyms, which I will let everybody else explain as part of their stuff. This is being recorded for playback if need be, or if you find it really interesting and you want to share it with other business owners in the area. There is a Q&A section for those of you online. If you would like to type in a question, we will take time at the end of each presentation to address those questions. We'll try to stay on top of those. So Sam and our folks from NLEA aren't trying to multitask throughout the entire presentation. With that, I'd like to introduce Sam Augusta from SBDC.
Thanks, Rachel. I really appreciate you inviting me to speak, and hello to everyone there at the EDC. Let me share my screen. So I'm a business consultant with the Northwest region of the Michigan SBDC. That stands for Small Business Development Center. And just a little bit of history on the SBDC. We are a program of the SBA, the MEDC, and we have local network partners. The SBA was a program that kind of started during Reconstruction of the Great Depression with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. And then during World War II, there was another program called the Smaller War Plants Corporation that also funded small businesses. And that went into the Korean War. The Department of Commerce had an office called the Office of Small Business that was primarily business education services. So in 1953, the Congress created the SBA, which kind of brought that financing and education component under one organization. And they started a program called Small Business Day. And using the extension model of kind of what agriculture had done with state universities, they wanted to get this program out to the rest of the country. So in 1979, they started the SBDC, and Michigan joined the network in 1984. So as you can see here on the map, there are 10 regions to the Michigan SBDC. We are hosted by Grand Valley State. The headquarters is in Grand Rapids. There are 10 regions. We are the Northwest region. And as you can see, Antrim County clearly in the Northwest region. So who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So the SBDC, we have 4 main consultant areas. So I'm a member of the small business team. Each region has a small business team of 2 to 5 consultants. Some regions are larger than others. We deal with, well, we'll get to that in a second. New ventures, we're basically generalists. We have a growth team who deal with larger businesses who have been in business for years. Maybe they're $500,000 revenue trying to get to $1 million. We have an export team that's spread across the state that helps usually first-time exporters. And then we have a tech team that helps with tech commercialization. These 3 teams are statewide, and their members can be anywhere across the state. The small business teams, we are usually in one region. So who we help? New ventures. I typically work with a lot of new ventures, people who come in and say I want to start a business, all kinds of those. Existing businesses that are looking for help, maybe with employees or with disaster assistance. The growth team will also work with existing businesses. Growth businesses are exactly those, the ones that are trying to scale up. And then emerging tech companies are usually the domain of the tech team. Results. So we are measured. All of this consulting is no cost, but we do need to report back to our funders how many businesses we helped start, how many jobs were created, how much capital was raised, or how much revenue increased. So the types of things that we do, as you can see, we help with a lot of aspects of small business operations. We've got business education webinars. I'll explain more on those in a minute. We help with business plan development, market research, strategic planning, raising capital. Financial management is essentially bookkeeping or accounting. We can help companies make sure they've got that squared away. Hiring employees. The tech team works with tech commercialization. Cybersecurity, this has become increasingly important for small businesses because the hackers can even hurt small businesses. Financial analysis, that runs the gamut from business planning to going after financing. Marketing, again, exporting. Focus 4, this is an interesting program that helps businesses with cash flow management to quickly revamp their businesses and have less chaos. And then we help businesses transition out of business. So when we do get a new client, say you refer someone you know who is interested in starting a business, we'll often start with the guide to operating a small business. This is a booklet that we produce that we can provide anyone there with some of these to hand out to their clients. It's basically the 10 steps to start a small business, and it's downloadable. Inside the book, it will describe the 10 steps. And when we get a new client, they often come in between step 9 and 10. They're ready to find some money to start their small business. And we meet them where they are, but we will often back up and say, is this a good idea? Have you done research? Let's make a business plan. Because before you go after financing, you need to have all these other things. So we do find that we have to work backwards in some cases to make sure that the business is viable and sustainable and is ready to move forward. So part of what we offer are business training. So we have got a number of webinars that are live that you can participate in that are led by trainers from across the state, or we have recorded webinars that you can watch whenever you have time. And these would be starting a business, writing a business plan. Again, financial management is basic bookkeeping. We have a lot of webinars on marketing and how to be found on Google. Business legal issues is setting up your LLC or whatever corporate structure you go with. Cybersecurity will teach you a lot of tips to maintain your so that your small business doesn't get hacked. Navigating the Michigan Treasury online, and marketing. So these are just a sample of the types of webinars that the SBDC offers. So if you go to our website, which is michigansbdc.org, this is where you will find this is kind of what the page looks like. It's upcoming live workshops and on demand. So you can register, you don't need to be a client for this. Anyone can check these out. If you would like to become a client of the SBDC, you can go to michigansbdc.org, and there's a button on here, which is sign up for free consultation services. This does create a confidentiality agreement between the SBDC and the client. So any information they tell us is, well, it's confidential. We can't share it with anyone else outside of the SBDC. And with that, I'll take any questions that anybody has.
See if we get our mics. Any questions within this building? I did not see anything online come through. Have you guys been for, had you heard of SBDC beforehand?
I worked for him before.
Well, you don't count.
What did I miss, David?
I think you got it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And if you do have any small businesses that you would like to refer to us, I'm happy to talk to anybody and let them know more or tell them what the process will be like.
We are able to share this, right?
Yep, we're recording this and it will be shared online. It's web.
Oh, I know GABA, our downtown area business, was just now, they had their first meeting this month.
Yep.
So they might be interested in seeing what's there, you know.
And I offered to Sam that once we get kind of out and about a little bit, if anyone would like to set up a meeting, that I would connect you guys.
Okay.
If you can't get through his contact information, I can also reach out to him.
Sam, is your office located in the area or are you down in Grand Rapids?
I'm in Traverse City.
Oh, you're in.
Right now we are 100% remote, but we hope to be back in the office at some point. So I'm happy to come out and meet whenever is a good time.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will add, because small town, Sam had a farm in Antrim County several years ago and had property, and his wife grew up on Torch Lake, so he knows the area well.
Good to meet you,
Good.
Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jeremy, I love you. He probably doesn't want to be on screen.
Yeah.
It's a lot of clicking going on.
So we're gonna transition over, and if Sam, if you wanna, are you gonna hang out in case we have more questions that come up?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, good.
perfect.
Because he knows I'm going to talk about it. And it's all good.
Till you get off.
Maybe it's better that you both weren't in person. No. But that way, if anyone listening or would like to have additional questions, Sam can come back on and answer those.
Sorry, we probably should have worked this out better.
We like to throw things at Jeremy last minute. It's a
I don't.
pressure test.
Just for the record,
Anything
Dave
at
doesn't.
anybody else.
Jeremy does a great job.
Getting there,
And we
almost
put him in
there.
charge.
Uh-huh.
So a little bit for those online with our webinar, our goal is to do 3 or 4 of these connector series this year. We are talking about, this is our first one, so we're looking at the fall because summer gets really busy for everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And so in the fall, we're looking at potentially doing a housing connector series to build off of this.
Off with the controller, so I'll just move it through for you.
Thank you. It's not up here.
All
So
right.
just give them a signal when you're ready.
All right, ready. You're ready, I'm ready. All right. I want to, David Emel from the Northern Lakes Economic Alliance. We're the economic development organization that supports Antrim, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, and Emmett counties. And in that role, we often work with businesses in a variety of stages of their growth and development. And the graphic that's up right now, kind of, this pinwheel really kind of describes what economic development is. So I want to talk a little bit about that and then talk a little bit about how we function in support of businesses and how we work together in collaborative partnership with organizations like the Small Business Development Center and other organizations. This graphic kind of represents kind of the 4 sections for economic development, the community development side and how community is involved, what, like it says, local economic development translates the community vision. We were talking a little bit about that earlier at the EDC level here, into reality by integrating municipal goals with the needs of the residents and businesses within the community.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's
Could
okay.
you speak over by the mic so that everybody online can?
Certainly. And it's stuck there. All right.
No, it's not. You can move it wherever you got it.
Okay. I realize I'm a bit of a barrier, so I'm just going to slide out of, can you see?
There you go.
Okay. And then as we talk about elected officials as an example and their role, right? Local economic development is more than just a jobs program, although jobs and high-paying job development is a primary focus of our organization. It focuses the community on the shared long-term vision and creates policies to enhance business vitality and increase the standard of living in communities. And that's a lot of what economic development does. We talk about government role. The development, local economic development involves the allocation of resources that positively affect job activity, or business activity, job creation, income generation, and fiscal sustainability in communities, right? So we need good paying jobs in communities. We need that supports the tax base of the community. Economic development focused on larger employers, again, through taxation, supports the tax base of the community. The balance between homestead, non-homestead, commercial and industrial tax base is sometimes a tricky balance in a lot of communities. And then on the business sector, what we call the private sector side, local economic development includes public and private sector stakeholders, which is all of us, that work together with existing and potential employers to help them thrive. And that's what we're talking about. So if you want to hit the next screen. So I'm going to give you a little bit of stats to kind of set a context for what we're talking about. Cross-county employment is a common issue and outcome in our region. I was recently presenting to Sheboygan County, and they have an interesting stat in that community. Somebody asked me, what is our biggest export? And I said, it's labor. They said, what do you mean? Well, I mean, we're not talking about labor. We're talking about other. I said, our biggest export is labor. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, in Sheboygan County, there are 4,531 jobs available to people in the community. There are 10,200 people in the workforce. You're the largest, right, distributor of labor in the region. People who live in your community are traveling to Gaylor, they're traveling to Charlevoix, they're traveling to Boyne City, they're traveling all over, they're traveling to Antrim County. Same thing happens in Antrim County, it happens in every county. Not everyone who works in a community or lives in a community works in a community, right? So we have a lot of that. So in our region, you know, when you look at our 4-county region, county residents working in the same community is about 68%, roughly 32% on average of people who live in any community travel outside of that county for work. Next slide, please. This is going to be hard to see. Industry employment or employment by industry in the region. Our region is made up of a variety of sectors, agriculture, manufacturing. The 15% is manufacturing. The 16% down here is retail, trade. It's a big part of our economy. The other 15% in yellow is healthcare and social assistance, and the 19% you see in the upper kind of left-hand corner is accommodation and food service. So when you take the green and the dark blue sector and add those together, it's a significant part of our overall economy, right? We are a resort and tourism-based economy to a large extent. Next slide. When you drill that down into Antrim County, as an example, you can see that construction, 13%, kind of going around the wheel, 13% construction, 19% manufacturing, 14% again in retail trade, 19%, the big yellow one up in the corner, is accommodation and food service. So again, heavy hospitality, but Antrim County has a fairly strong manufacturing sector. Next slide. Oh, go back one, sorry. So again, kind of drawing back to the comment I made earlier about Sheboygan County, you can see that in the top of that slide, there are 3,838 private sector jobs in Antrim County. Not public sector, private sector, non-governmental private sector jobs. All right, next slide. This is kind of looking at labor and what's happening with labor and population across the region. You see that our population, the blue bars, took a jump in 2020 during the pandemic. We don't have total numbers yet for 2021 and estimates for 2021 that's coming, but you can see that our participation in the workforce has dropped across the region. If you go to the next slide,
Crazy.
it will give you and show you specifically this county, right? So we saw an increase. We've had a kind of a steady decline in population. We saw a jump in 2020. We know that in the demographic sector, it's an aging part of the population. It's people who are retired mostly, right? And you can see on the orange line what's happened to workforce. So workforce is down to in the county about 9,000, probably 890, somewhere around that. So it's dropped considerably since 2019. So we've got some challenges. So next slide. GDP per capita, gross domestic product, what we make here and what we move out of the area that brings in cash or brings in capital. That's how we measure gross domestic product. Antrim County is the gray bar at the very bottom. Kind of parallels pretty closely to Sheboygan County in terms of just outputs, what we're manufacturing here, what we're making, and that is also agriculture products that leave the area. So it's ag and manufacturing primarily. The region does pretty well. The region is kind of the orange line in the middle. It just gives you an idea of what's happening. So it has been trending upward, but we saw a decrease in 2020, not surprising, right?
Is Antrim because of the agricultural that we are trending up higher than Sheboygan?
I would guess that if you looked at 2020 and the only county that stayed flat or didn't decrease is Antrim County, and it's probably because of ag.
Okay.
Where the supply chains and manufacturing very disrupted during the pandemic,
Mhm.
agriculture less disrupted, right? So if you hop onto the next slide. So who we are, we're a public-private partnership working to grow the economy and enhance prosperity and quality of life for all residents in our service area. That's Antrim, Charlevoix, Sheboygan, and Emmett County. We do that through partnership. Next slide. Within that service area, 4 member counties, 65 townships, 6 cities, 10 villages, and a total population based on the 2020 census of 109,000 people. Next slide. Some of our core partners. Next slide. Chamber member partners, board of directors, how we're structured. I don't want to get too much into that. We can kind of stop there. What I want to talk about though, team, our team is made up of a combination of full-time employees and some contracted staff. Myself, Buck, who's focused primarily on business growth and retention, working directly with businesses, Jessica and her role in community developments and grant administration. Sam, who's our strategic initiatives manager. June 1, we have a new employee coming online, Chris Bauer, who's going to work strictly in community and economic development. He is a certified planner and with a lot of experience in brownfields. So that's pretty exciting. The other folks we have are broadband expert, bookkeeper, and communicator, work in either a volunteer capacity or a subcontract capacity. So in terms of support for businesses, and this is a really important part of the conversation today, and that is that we work closely 2 sectors, right? If you think about early stage companies, small business, when the federal definition of small business generally are businesses with less than 500 employees. Okay, can you think of very many businesses we have here that have more than 500 employees in Antrim County?
Maybe Shanty Creek. That would be
Right.
Yeah, probably not since 2006.
So yeah, large hospitality like Shanty Creek, getting up there. Generally, in most communities, in rural communities, the largest employer, hospital
Right. And schools.
and schools,
Mhm.
two largest employers, right? So the challenge with that is that most of our businesses are considered small business. Then we have what are called micro enterprise. Micro enterprise is a sector of small business which is generally less than 50 employees and most often less than 10. There are mom and pop places, our bakeries, our local hospitality providers. And so what happens in that, and what I want to point out is our relationship with the Small Business Development Centers of Michigan is an important relationship. They're the best resource in the state when it comes to working with micro enterprise and small business, and especially early stage companies. And what they do in partnership with us is to get them, those companies, through their growth. So a lot of times small business starts, and the definition is usually the first 3 years of operation, where you're still a startup. Once you become stabilized, now that's the first objective is to get a business stabilized and then to help it grow. So our focus is primarily on working with those larger growth stage companies to help them grow even more. And we tend to work primarily in the manufacturing sector, or what we call sometimes the wealth creation sector. If you're producing goods and products, the ag industry is a great example of that. It's our oldest kind of wealth creation industry in the United States, right? Producing, you take sand, seed, sun, water, basic resources, and you plant a crop, and you grow that crop, you harvest that crop, and the value of that crop, once it's harvested, is worth more than all of the inputs. And that's what creates wealth, and that's what helps communities grow. It helps us support our schools, helps us support healthcare. That's why we focus on that. In that sector for businesses, we work specifically with those businesses to help them grow. Sometimes that's access to new markets. That can be done in a variety of ways. Could be domestic markets or international markets. But the objective is to help those companies grow, to build the number of, generally speaking, higher paying, benefited jobs that contribute to the local economy. And that's really where our focus is. So Sam and his team are an excellent resource in communities to focus on the small micro enterprise, early stage. We work primarily with later stage companies. So if you can imagine, some of your bigger manufacturers, as they're trying to grow or stabilize, and they have challenges. We work with the community to help create the infrastructure needed to support private sector enterprise growth. Everyone understand what that means, the infrastructure? So we're talking about water, sewer, could be, stormwater in addition to sanitary, right? Electrical, power, gas, propane, natural gas, those types of things, broadband, all of those pieces of infrastructure that are important to helping a business grow, community grow. So what questions does anybody have on that?
I have a comment. Our numbers are probably going to look not so good for 2021 with Armor Express moving out.
Correct.
That's true.
So it looked like we had a question from Joni.
It was just a statement.
Okay, I missed it. I don't see it on this one.
Well, it's, I know that some of you might be the stargazers and know that we've had planets align this month and this is going on. Dabba just met, we've just talked about sewer and what we're doing for the businesses in downtown Alden, and now I have this recorded thing that I can share with them, so. Stars are aligning in Alden too.
I love it.
And that's ideally the goal of this, is that even if we don't have questions necessarily today, that this can be, it's
Foundation.
recorded and it's a foundation that can be played for folks as they're looking at Antrim County. I
Right.
think it's important. We have a lot of opportunity here. and connecting with the right people to grow. And I like this combination of beginning businesses to
Mhm.
taking the next step. What do we do? Any other questions?
Well, I'm not sure all who's watching, but, the difference, Dave, between a service sector job, for instance, and a manufacturing job and the impact on the community. I'm wondering if you could just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. That's something we're actually monitoring very closely. So this is probably the first time, wouldn't you say, Jessica, in a long time that we've actually seen service sector economy jobs paying more in some cases than manufacturing sector economy jobs. Traditionally, manufacturing sector has always been kind of the leader when it comes to base wages and salaries and benefits, that whole compensation package. Because of what's happening, drivers from the pandemic and what's happened, especially in the service economy, we're seeing folks in the hospitality sector now offering health insurance and other types of benefits and starting salaries, and some of those that are starting to exceed manufacturing, which is the first time we've ever seen that, locally and regionally. So, at some point, we know that there aren't enough people to fill all the jobs that we have, both full-time and part-time and seasonal jobs. That issue began before the pandemic. It was made worse by the pandemic. More people have left the workforce. I've always said this, if you look, at a macro level in economic development, what are the drivers that drive people back into the workforce? Inflation is the number one driver of motivator of people getting back into the workforce. Inflation is happening. We're seeing it. We're at a 40-year high in inflation. Will we start to see people re-engage in the workforce? Probably. So, but yeah, our service part of our economy, it's an important part of the experience in our resort communities. People come here because of that. It's part of the culture of our communities. It's part of the fabric, right? Our local restaurants and hotels and things like that. It's all part of the Northern Michigan experience that we, provide for a lot of our guests and tourists who come here. So it's important, right? It's a critical part of our economy. So, but we're seeing some interesting interplay happening between those two sectors.
Something that I learned in one of either your presentation or presentation of your staff, one of the two, is, and I was surprised to hear this, and is that there's not a whole lot of interplay between the employees in one sector and the other. You don't see service sector people going and taking jobs in the manufacturing much. That really surprised me. Especially with the difference in the past anyways, the difference
Right.
in wages paid.
Does it have to do with age?
Yeah, I think that there are some perceptions, less probably around age and more with perceptions of what manufacturing is. There's, the perceptions of it as a, dark, dingy, kind of impersonal work environment. While we certainly have those, we're seeing certain, manufacturers who are, making a transition to more state-of-the-art work environments. So work cells and work structures in a lot of manufacturing environment don't permit a lot of interaction between employees.
That's true.
And so, people who have a desire to have a lot of interaction with their fellow employees or interaction with guests tend to migrate to that hospitality environment, restaurant service industry.
My son works in manufacturing in Boyne City, and he was working 60 and 70 hours a week, but the company has they bring in part-time that only work Saturday and Sunday, but they pay them more than they pay that hourly employee, a lot less than they're paying him to work that Saturday and Sunday. So, he's happy with it because now he has time. But they're getting creative on how they are trying to stay afloat while we have this long or full-time employee. I think manufacturing is still facing that all of them, we're still facing some of the requirements that are placed once you hit that hourly point in our regulation system, so they are having to use overtime and part-time employees to handle that instead of having that 40-hour week that we used to have, I think.
Yeah, and there are companies starting to
Area.
look at, because of the number of retirees, right, and the aging of our population, companies are starting to look at the way their scheduling, right, work scheduling occurs, and looking at, okay, if you're somebody who is at age 60 and you're ready, or 55 and ready to start thinking about retiring, as opposed to walking out the door and being done with your employment, is there a phased retirement approach, right? Going from 40 hours a week to 30, to 20, to 15 or 10, to exiting the org. So looking at having more flexibility, it causes lots of challenges in terms of planning and shifts and, but companies are looking at that. And that's a great thing. How to keep people in the workforce longer.
I'm curious about the partnerships that you and Sam might have and how you guys work together. Is there some examples or case studies that either one of you could share that could give some inspiration to those listening?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. Probably most recently, the NLEA has hosted a series of pitch events over the last several years. So previously to the last couple of years, those pitch events often involved individuals or within communities that had an idea for a business and wanting to launch and start a new enterprise. In our partnership arrangement, we would often have those individuals work with an SBDC counselor to develop their business plan, and then also develop their pitch, their presentation, and their slide deck, if you will. And so the SBDC is an important partner in that they have a really good set of skills in working with early stage companies. One of the things that we've done over the last year and a half is to shift that, as our pitch events have shifted to more of an innovation focus. Sam's a guy who attends those events either virtually or in person. And then as we get companies that come in and make a pitch and we provide some perhaps seed funding for them, the other primary connection then is to connect them with the SBDC as a resource to help them become what we call lender ready, right? Working with a financial institution and the business plan, all the things that have to occur up front in order to make them eligible to, receive capital from a bank or a lender, right? So commercial loans different than residential type loans. The structures are different. How those are collateralized are different. So they have a lot of expertise in that. So I would say from a case study perspective, we have a long history of working together. So if you call our organization and say, hey, I'm getting ready to launch a business, the first person I'm going to connect you with is Sam.
Thank you, because I was hoping to make that connection that it's not you or him, it's a group effort.
Yep. It's a
In our
hand in glove
community.
relationship that we have. Yep.
Any other thoughts on your end, Sam? I know he's muted.
You nailed it, David.
There you go.
It's better than hail to pit. Okay. Any other further questions? I'd like to thank, we have a great long list. It looks like that joined us online today. We will continue these series if you find them beneficial. Once they are online, we will send out an email letting you know, and hopefully you can share them with your colleagues along the way. Oh, do we have one more?
We do. Question is it common to hear tourists say living up north seems great if you can find work? What do you see as some of the biggest obstacles to creating and maintaining prosperous, sustainable employers in a workforce in northern Michigan?
Boy.
Housing.
That's, yes, I think that is a common sentiment. I know that, I faced that when I moved up north. Finding, quality work comes in a variety of different ways. And so It is part of the, Northern Michigan experience. A lot of people, it depends on what kind of stage in life you're at. If you're, somebody mentioned it earlier, if you work in the tech industry and you're dependent upon broadband or internet access, you can live literally and work anywhere in the world these days, right? But it all is dependent upon your ability to connect to the outside world to do your job. So you can work from home. We're seeing a lot of that in Northern Michigan as broadband and TrueStream in particular has really kind of proliferated across the area. It really has opened up a pathway for a lot of people. We saw that during the pandemic, right? People who have a cottage here who live downstate who said, hey, I'm getting out of the city and I'm coming up here to live and work. And so we've seen that. And that will continue because of the flexibility that broadband provides for us. The other, how to grow, a robust workforce, there's the state of Michigan, I think right now, last stat I heard was we're about 300,000 people shy of filling all the jobs that we have in the state of Michigan. 300,000 people. Now that may not seem like a large number, but that is a pretty big number. So for companies to thrive and grow and even sustain here in the state, they have to have access to either efficiency or labor, right? So labor costs are going to go up. We know it's increasing. It's creating some challenges. Labor rates are generally lower here than they are in Southeast Michigan. Not surprising. Cost of living is higher in Southeast Michigan. So, there are opportunities. I think we're starting to see companies look at new ways of attracting and retaining talent. It's going to continue to be an issue, but there's a lot of opportunities. Probably the single biggest issue is you're going to have to travel for work. And sometimes you're going to travel, 30 minutes to an hour. So that might mean traveling, living in one community, traveling to another community to work. But that happens in large metropolitan areas too, where a 15-mile drive could take you an hour in the morning.
Yeah.
An hour drive here gets you 60 miles away for work and back.
Yeah.
So.
Another question. It seems in Elk Rapids that our greatest challenge is finding housing options for potential employees, especially for our manufacturing sector. We have over 600 employees in manufacturing at Burnett's, Shorts, ER Engineering, Traverse Bay Manufacturing, and Trelleborg, but can't find any housing options for their new employees. Are there any resources available through Antrim County or NLEA to assist us with this issue?
This is an issue that is an issue in every community in Northern Michigan. It's an issue literally in every community in the state of Michigan. Housing and housing affordability and accessibility has become a big topic and a big issue. Every community is engaged in it one way or another, trying to identify solutions to that. The organization Housing North, which covers the 10 counties of Northwest Michigan, based out of Traverse City, is probably the organization making the most headway in that. It's working with local units of government in terms of identifying barriers to affordable, accessible housing, what can be done, whether that means leveraging land banks locally, modifying zoning in the case where you have zoning to make it more home friendly. There's a lot of communities looking at that. The challenge of it is that, one of the things that happened during the pandemic environment is we saw a lot of people coming to the area buying real estate. And so a lot of our affordable real estate has come off the market, right? It's moved into, vacation rentals by owner, Airbnbs, other types of short-term rentals, and also people buying them for personal use. So a lot of our inventory of housing has really gone away. And in order to get that back, we're looking at it's a 20 to 30 year issue. We know if you look at the stats and data that Housing North has put out, we know that in Northern Michigan, we're thousands of homes behind building where we need to be. Some of that is a result of the last housing market issues from 2008, 2009. We've never really caught up to that. We have communities that have very aging home inventory. So there are challenges with that. So I don't, the recruitment, retention, and attraction for employees at manufacturers is an issue. And everyone's facing the same issue. And there isn't a quick solution to that. We're looking at a couple of areas of opportunity as an example, housing manufacturers, and looking at how do we bring more home manufacturing to the area, where you potentially mass build homes that can be placed on sites that are ready for development. Infrastructure needs, it's housing just like business, and placing businesses in communities is also a challenge. It requires infrastructure. And so working with communities to ensure that they have development ready sites for housing, just like we would have development ready sites for a manufacturer or any other type of business, is important to that. I know that doesn't answer the question in its entirety, because it's not a question that's easy to answer. I know there's a lot of folks looking at it.
And our goal next time for the next one is to have it housing specific. So we'll have Housing North in along with some other community resources, maybe Habitat.
Yeah.
Would be a good one.
Something that, again, like you say, it was when I came in and first started looking at grants and the data that came out of the housing from Traverse City, we were already way behind on being able to provide housing.
Yeah, I mean, add to that all the supply chain issues that are out there right now. Cost to build per square feet exceeds what people have the capacity to pay for. So
Right.
Building affordable housing isn't necessarily,
Affordable.
It's not going to be an investment that you're going to
Right.
make money on.
So then the question becomes, do you focus on building market rate, recognizing that when you build market rate, it allows people to move more down to that, which then frees up inventory down the cycle. There's a lot of questions around that.
On the radio this morning, they were just talking about how desire for larger homes is starting to take the focus off of from the construction folks off building smaller affordable homes. So that's another competing factor, I guess, is and I don't know how, they weren't talking about this area specifically. I think they were talking generally speaking, and I don't know how much that's a factor here.
Again,
Yeah.
driven by who can afford to build. If you can afford to build a bigger home at this point in time, rapidly.
And companies prefer to be on jobs longer with bigger paychecks,
Yeah.
which are the bigger high-end homes rather than small.
Right. I mean, a lot of the contractors are moving to that too. Like you say, they can stay on
Yep.
a longer period of time.
There's a couple of other organizations, Northern Homes, and I haven't heard much out of them in quite some time. And then I know that two of the other counties in our NLEA region here have hired people specific to focus on housing. And Charlevoix has had that person in place for maybe a year or at least.
Right.
I'm wondering if they're seeing anything out of that. Anything good.
Yeah, I think that's a great question for the next session when you get into housing, and to ask them, what are you seeing as a result of having those, housing, folks in, it's both Emmett and Charlevoix County that have Emmett most recently put a person into that role, what they're starting to see from that.
Do we have any other questions in the notes?
No.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us online. This will be recorded. We'll let you know, or it is recorded, and we will let you know when it is released online. And also along with our next one that will hopefully be in the fall. Check one more time.
There is one last question.
Oh, there is.
Mansalona, very fortunate. Jason Green, a contractor, has purchased several light homes, cleaned them up, and is renting them downtown. He has renovated old buildings, and the apartments upper level are now higher end rentables. They are full.
That's good.
Wow.
So a perfect example where one person can come in and make an impact.
Mhm.
And he's done a great job in downtown Mansalona. It's
Yeah, it's good to see.
it's good to see. There are buildings for rent if you need a storefront. Love to feel that hardware in Mansalona. I think that'd be great. So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to you joining us on our next one.
That's good.